Jack had been grinding away on fresh test data, a tedious, never-ending task crucial to his team's recent work on the test car. Despite his clear lack of enthusiasm, he meticulously organized the data for analysis. Just then, his phone buzzed with a text alert. He glanced at the screen, momentarily ignoring who the message was from. Only when he took a break from his data work did he pick up his phone to check the message. It was from an unknown number, though the area code was local. He initially thought it might be spam, but decided to open it just in case it was from a team member he hadn't saved in his contacts yet. When he clicked on the message, he was greeted with a shocking sight, a sexually explicit photo. Confused, he read the accompanying message. "Pay close attention. You still have time at Mason's 18. His first reaction was a chuckle. It wasn't often they got misdirected messages. But as he looked at the image again, his heart skipped a beat. On the woman's left leg, nearly impossible to see at first glance, was a tiny mole, one that belonged to Emma, his wife of 6 years. Staring at her in disbelief, he desperately searched for anything to deny what he was seeing. But the more he scrutinized, the clearer it became that the photograph was indeed of his wife. He reread the message, puzzled by its meaning. Mason's was a local pub, but not a place Emma ever visited. He was in a neighboring town, so why mention Mason's? It was 5:15 p.m., and Emma should have been on her way to Boston. Her team was preparing for a big proposal presentation on Monday, and they were scheduled to rehearse this weekend. As one of the team leaders, Emma's presence was crucial. Her flight was supposed to have landed in Boston at 4:30, and she usually checked in right away, but maybe she was busy organizing her team and their equipment. Jack thought about calling her, but decided to respond to the message first. Nothing original, but entirely expected. "Who is this? And where did you get this photo? Should I meet you at Mason's?" He typed out. He packed up his things for the day and decided to head to Mason's to get some answers. He needed to hear from Emma about the flight, so he texted her a casual, "How did the flight go? I'm grabbing a bite. Call me when you're free." He planned to stay low-key and figure things out. As he walked to his car, his phone beeped again. He thought it was Emma, but found it was the mysterious sender again. "I'll be there, but I'm sure you'll find someone more interesting than me." Jack's mind spun. He quickly opened the Maps app and hurried to his car. It took him 30 minutes to reach Mason's, and it was now 5:40 p.m. He'd arrived shortly after 6 o'clock. Unaware of the urgency, he hoped to make it in time to meet whoever the sender thought would interest him. On the way, his phone rang. This time it was Emma, saying she was caught up with her team and would call him later before bed. "Love you," she added. He didn't dwell on it. Their conversation could wait. His focus was on the meeting at Mason's and how the sender got such personal information about his wife. His heart raced as he pulled into the parking lot at 6:12 p.m. The sender hadn't mentioned who he was looking for, so Jack assumed whoever wanted to meet him knew who he was and would make contact. The idea that someone else might be more captivating troubled him. The sender seemed to have information he didn't, leaving Jack feeling manipulated, yet he couldn't think of another way to solve the mystery. As he stepped into the dimly lit pub, he surveyed the unfamiliar surroundings, unsure of the layout. Ahead was a large dining area, and to the left was the bar. He chose a seat at the end of the bar and flagged down the bartender, who had just finished with a well-dressed patron. He ordered a draft and turned his attention to the dining room. A man, having placed his order, walked across the floor to a table where a group was enjoying themselves. Then he saw what the message had hinted at. Emma was at the table, graciously accepting a drink from a sharply dressed man, looking stunning in her little black dress and pearls. Jack, operating on autopilot, moved towards the table. When Emma saw him, her welcoming smile turned into a look of shock. Unfazed, Jack approached, grabbing the well-dressed man by the hair and yanking him back forcefully. The man's drink spilled, and he stumbled backward, crying out in pain as Jack dragged him away. Jack released his grip and prepared to throw a punch, only to find that Sam had already retreated, landing on his backside before Jack could act. "Don't bother getting up, Sam," Jack warned. Sam, now disheveled and soaked from the spilled drinks, nodded quietly and made no move to get up or speak. Jack shifted his gaze back to Emma, noting the somber silence around the table. He recognized several faces, members of Emma's team who frequently visited their home. He wondered about their loyalty to the team amidst this betrayal. except for one person. Someone at that table knew the truth and decided to reveal it. Jack briefly considered uncovering the informant's identity, but quickly dismissed it as not worth his time. "I'm heading home. If there's any chance of saving our marriage, you'll come home now," he declared. Emma agreed and began to stand, but Jack motioned for her to wait. "Give me a moment to leave," he requested. Before heading out, he addressed Grace Mitchell, who was sitting next to Ethan Walker. "Grace, Ryan thinks you're in Boston too. Ethan, is this what Olivia believes?" Their silent avoidance of eye contact spoke volumes. "Is the entire team involved with each other?" Jack wondered. Sadly, he knew that at least one of them was. The drive home was mechanical, and he was almost surprised to find himself pulling into his driveway. Inside the house, he grabbed a beer from the fridge and sank into the living room. While he knew Ryan Mitchell and Olivia Walker, the other two couples among the 4 people present were unfamiliar to him. He debated calling Ethan or Olivia, but realized he had little inclination to engage in conversation without useful information. However, given the deceit of Grace and Ethan and the seriousness of the situation, he decided to send them a message. "Just heard from Emma. The team's travel plan seems to have changed. Best to call for updates." Now they were aware of a disruption and could decide if they wanted to investigate further. At least his conscience was clear. About 20 minutes later, he heard the garage door open, signaling Emma's return. He waited in the living room as she came in, still in her little black dress, but without her shoes and jewelry. Despite her calm appearance, he sensed she was ready to talk as she settled onto the sofa across from him. He chose to remain silent, believing in the power of silence during discussions, and prepared to let it linger as long as necessary. But it didn't last. Emma looked like she was about to burst. "It's not what you think," she began, but Jack cut her off with a raised hand. "You have no idea what I think about what I saw tonight," Jack snapped. "I don't need a long explanation. We're both engineers. We know there's no definite answer to any question. Why is just a way to rationalize poor outcomes, so I won't bother asking. Let's start with something else. How much time, how many people, how often do our acquaintances know about this? Apart from those at the table, am I the betrayed man among our friends and colleagues?" "No, Jack, it's not like that," Emma replied. "We're a team. Our travel plans changed. And instead of going home and traveling again tomorrow, Sam suggested we stay in town to rest before the job starts." "I didn't see the whole team there. Where was everyone else?" Jack asked. "Some decided to stay home an extra night and meet us at the airport tomorrow," she admitted. "But you chose to deceive me," he accused. "You seemed quite close to Sam. Is there something between the star engineer and the prodigy program manager that I should know about?" "Well, for starters, Sam is okay, and he convinced Mason's owners not to press charges," she said, sounding somewhat defensive. Jack's eyes widened in disbelief at her loyalty. "I couldn't care less about your boyfriend. If that fool hadn't fallen, I would have given him a broken nose. And by the way, the verdict is still out," Jack remarked. "Let him press charges. I've already spent a night in jail. I'm not scared of that." "Fair point. This could serve as compelling evidence," he said with a half smile. "Do you love him?" Emma paused, collecting her thoughts. "Yes." Her admission hung heavily in the air, and once again silence filled the room, signaling trouble ahead. "He's not my boyfriend. Nothing happened," she continued. "Yes, I should have told you about the change in travel plans, but it seemed minor. Whether I was in town or in Boston, it didn't matter. You weren't expecting me, and I was still committed to the team. We just had dinner before going to our rooms. There was no reason for you to react the way you did. He only brought drinks. You completely humiliated me in front of my team." In full defensive mode, she tried to keep her composure and feign indifference. Jack pulled out his phone, opened the message with the photo, and slid it across the coffee table to her. From her reaction, he knew she remembered the photo and the circumstances, realizing denial was futile. Without further delay, she began again. He picked up his phone, started the voice recording app, and placed the phone in his shirt pocket. "Jack, our team," she hesitated, searching for the right words. We're very close-knit in many ways, most of us," she continued. "We have a small group that meets regularly. Mason's hosted us all. We were the ones handling most of the proposal preparation. You know how much time I put into our proposal?" "I can't pinpoint exactly when it started," Emma confessed. It was sometime after Sam took over as the leader. We worked closely together, and I found myself drawn to him, and it just happened. Intentionality, Jack interjected. Lovemaking isn't spontaneous. There are conscious choices at every step. We both understand that. So please, spare me the excuses. So it's been nearly 6 months, Jack continued, answering his own question. That's when Sam secured the contract, right? Emma nodded. And the team? He asked. All of you. Are you all involved? Emma nodded again. Yes. Sam believed it helped build trust and team cohesion. Is that how he convinced everyone to start a company lovemaking team? Jack asked, his tone laced with sarcasm. Now you're being disrespectful, Emma said, her voice rising. It's much deeper than that. I feel a strong connection to Sam and the team, more than ever, she added, her confidence growing. Jack sensed trouble brewing. Unfortunately, you'll see some personnel changes in your team, Jack said. What have you done? Emma gasped. Jack, if you tell anyone else, it will only cause more damage. Let them decide for themselves. We have to accept it. Emma, I can't stay silent and be complicit, Jack said. I favor Ethan and Olivia. Actually, I prefer them over Grace and Ryan. He had already informed them that his travel plans seemed to have changed. How your friends respond to their spouses and how their spouses handle it is their business. I can live with my decision. Jack, we have the most productive team in Cromerica Inc. ES history, Emma almost shouted. And you benefited too. Just because we held team meetings on Wednesdays doesn't mean you missed out. I never excluded you. You always had access when needed. So I was socializing with my team earlier, and you were unaware. Do you want to discuss that photo you showed me? She taunted. So now, just because you know, and because your ego is bruised, you want to undermine everything my team and I have accomplished? Her anger was palpable, and Jack's heart rate surged as he listened to her defend her team's actions. He had briefly considered forgiving her on the ride home from Mason's, if it had been a one-time thing with Sam. That notion was long gone. He didn't want to hear any more. But Emma persisted. No, sir. We won't let you off the hook. You need to text Ethan and Olivia to let them know you heard from me. We're stuck in Atlanta but have flights booked for tomorrow morning. That's the story Grace and Ryan will stick to, and you'll back them up. Got it? What's next? Jack yelled back. There is no next, Emma shot back. Are you leaving now? You, your messed up team, and your leader Sam can do whatever you want. We're finished. I'll find a lawyer this week and settle everything. It's a straightforward 50-50 split. You keep your pension, I keep mine. Go. You have reservations in the city. Use them. Head to Boston and chalk up another big win for you and your team, Jack declared. Jack, please send those messages, Emma pleaded, her tone softer now. If we lose Grace or Ryan before the presentation, the company could lose millions. We could miss out on tens, maybe hundreds of thousands in commissions and bonuses. Just think of the possibilities with that money. Just for us. Forget about this misunderstanding. Please, Jack, don't let unfounded concerns about casual relationships ruin everything. Sam says I'm on track for CEO status. I just need to keep doing what we're doing for a few more years. Don't you want that for me? For us? Just leave, Jack said, barely managing to get the words out before a forceful blow struck his back. It knocked the wind out of him, and he fell to the floor with a knee pressed into his back. Don't injure him, Emma interjected. At least not too much, she added. So the jury's still out on whether my nose was broken, huh? Sam remarked, leaning in as Jack lay pinned. Jack suspected a transmitter was involved. Now I know whose side she's on, he thought. Let's see whose nose ends up broken, Sam grinned. Grab his damn phone and send these damn texts for him. We don't have time for this nonsense, someone instructed, hoisting Jack from the floor. There was only one person. Jack feigned offense, causing the person behind him to struggle to lift him, revealing they were a weak office type, wheezing from the effort. After being used as a punching bag, Jack caught his breath and prepared to fight back. Unlike Sam and his team of polished salespeople, Jack's team operated in the field with the 160th SOAR Detachment from Fort Campbell, California. Though they weren't on the same level, they had supported the Pillsbury trials, working alongside seasoned veterans who piloted aircraft modified by Jack's team. If these individuals showed up at your door, it signaled the end of your days on Earth. Jack and his team developed the equipment necessary for entering and extricating themselves from hotspots. They took pride in their contributions, ensuring mission success and the safe return of all personnel. The 160th members and their tough passengers were genuinely grateful for the hard work Jack's team put into making their gear fully operational. Among them was Staff Sergeant Reed Lawson, the most intimidating presence around. Known far and wide, Lawson commanded respect from everyone, from vagrants to high-ranking colonels, due to his reputation for sticking with his men on global missions. His commitment to never leaving anyone behind became legendary, especially after the Columbia mission. He instructed the young lieutenant platoon leader to stay close, noting that it was the lieutenant's first mission, and he was doing well for a rookie. When FARC rebels suddenly opened fire and ambushed their team, they managed to fend off the attack. But as Lawson looked back, he saw the lieutenant lying on the ground, bleeding from a head wound. The medic assessed him and noted he had lost consciousness. Lawson immediately knelt down and lifted him onto the fire carrier. "He's gone," the medic reiterated. "Maybe," Lawson replied, "but he's still coming home with us." The medic looked at him as if he were out of his mind. "We have over 5 treks through dense forest to get back to the landing site. We'll be lucky to make it out in one piece. But hauling a dead guy? What's he thinking?" The seasoned sergeant cut in. "I'd do the same for you, Ryanie," he assured the medic. "Stick close in case I need you." Their return to base turned into legend. As the helicopter landed, the doctor awaited them. The medic briefed the doctor on the lieutenant's condition. The doctor, nodding, pulled out a flashlight with a pen from his pocket. To the medic's astonishment, the dead lieutenant's pupils contracted under the light. "Care to reconsider your diagnosis, doctor?" the doctor asked, hurrying the revived lieutenant to the operating room. The doctor was a timeless figure who didn't speak much, but when he did, everyone listened. In an era of mass production and disposability, he stood out as uniquely crafted by hand. Jack and his team were particularly fascinated by him. During the long downtime between missions, the staff sergeant taught Jack and his team basic yet effective hand-to-hand combat techniques. He warned the engineers to be ready for the unexpected. "I understand the worst you might face is a jammed copier or a paper cut, but if you stay in this field, you might find yourself in some tough spots. So if you ever run into the locals, you'll have some useful knowledge," Staff Sergeant Lawson shared. "Let's hope a paper cut remains your biggest problem," Jack thought, subtly leaning against his captor to feign compliance. Reflecting on the combat techniques the sergeant had shown, Jack realized that sometimes you can't do much but endure. It's not ideal, but it happens. The key is to remember that even when you're struck, you still have the ability to fight back. You just need to outsmart your opponent. Jack applied this lesson, using passive resistance to weaken his single captor. "Give me the phone, Jack," Sam demanded, locking eyes with him. "Now that you know about my affair with your wife, you're just another weak geek. Do as we say, and maybe you can still be with Emma when we're done with her. Don't forget the luxuries her bonus can buy you. Maybe Emma will even get you a synthetic companion for those lonely nights." Jack stayed silent as Sam took pleasure in humiliating him. "Where is it, Jack?" Sam asked, noticing the outline of a phone in Jack's shirt pocket. "Ah, found it." Sam reached for it with his right hand. Jack swiftly pulled back his right heel, striking Sam's shin, and then pushing down until it collided with his Gucci moccasin-clad toes. Flexing his arms, Jack broke free from Sam's grip, causing Sam to cry out in pain as he fell under Jack's weight. Sam's eyes widened in recognition as Jack quickly extended his right hand, using a shoulder turn as the first sergeant had taught him, and delivered a powerful punch to Sam's face. Jack felt a bone fracture beneath his fist, as a geyser of blood erupted from Sam's nose, causing him to collapse like he'd been struck by an axe. Turning to see who else was involved, Jack found Ryan lying on the floor, clutching his leg and moaning, "I think you broke my leg." Jack stomped forcefully on Ryan's foot, eliciting another cry of pain. "That should clear up any doubt," Jack retorted, then turned back to Sam, who was trying to rise to his knees, hands pressed to his injured face. Leaning close, Jack whispered in Sam's ear, "Looks like you've got a broken nose, Sam, but I'm not done fighting for the team just yet," before delivering a firm blow to Sam's temple, making him slump back down. Adrenaline pumping, Jack scanned the living room for Emma. Suddenly, a sharp blow to the middle of his back and the base of his neck dropped him to one knee. Turning to face the attacker, Jack saw Emma wielding a cast-iron frying pan. Her swing missed him, grazing his side. As Jack rose to his feet, he grabbed the frying pan from Emma. Jack, we can still fix this, Emma pleaded. Think about the money you'll lose. I'll end this affair. I'll stop them, I promise. Just us, like old times. Rubbing the back of his head with his left hand, Jack stared at her, amazed by how quickly she seemed to transform from one version of herself to another. For a moment, he thought of her like the alien creature in John Carpenter's The Thing, adapting to every new situation. He chuckled at the comparison. Seeing his smile as encouragement, Emma moved in for a hug. Jack let her approach, lowering his left hand from his neck to steady her. Then, after a short pause, he raised his right hand and delivered a punch to her nose. Not hard enough to knock her out, but enough to break a bone. Emma screamed and collapsed to the floor. "Doesn't it hurt?" Jack asked. "Your eyes are watering, you can't see or breathe properly, and there's blood everywhere. Seems pretty effective," he commented. "Why did you slap me?" Emma cried. "Because I could," Jack replied, his phone still recording the whole thing. While not all of the footage would work in his favor, he felt he had enough evidence to justify his actions. Remembering the staff sergeant's advice, he scanned the room. "Decide when to act and wait for the right moment. When you do act, be decisive and keep going until you're the only one left standing," he recalled. With only Ryan whimpering in the corner and Emma trying to stop her nose from bleeding, Jack was the only one still active. "You've saved another ace," Jack thought. "Doesn't quite fit your profile, lover boy, and Mr. Ryan will be fit for duty by Monday." "What rotten luck to miss out on those millions and big bonuses," Jack said aloud. "I wonder what Mark will have to say about all this," he mused, considering calling for emergency help. He hesitated, realizing that involving the police would ruin his chance to question Emma. Jack approached her where she sat, with a dish towel pressed to her face. Kneeling beside her, he demonstrated how to pinch the bridge of her nose with his thumb and index finger. The adrenaline was fading, leaving him exhausted, and he slumped into the chair across from Emma. Where did my wife go? He wondered. The Emma he dealt with daily seemed vastly different from the woman before him, making him question how thoroughly she had deceived him. "Was it worth it?" he asked. Emma looked at him and shook her head. "It could have been," she replied. "If only you'd agreed. We were so close. After Monday, I'd be on my way to the executive suite. This setback will delay everything. I can fix it, but it's a setback." "So becoming vice president was your ultimate goal?" Jack asked. "What about us? Deception? Lies? Will this continue?" "Jack, you're so naive," Emma said. "Sam warned me that your rigid ethics and Boy Scout mentality would hold me back if I let them. He advised me to break free from your influence and carve out my own path to success." "Did he give you this advice before or after he took advantage of you?" Jack shot back. "You don't know the half of it," she spat. "I tried to follow your advice like a good engineer, thinking it would boost my career. Want to know what really works?" Jack stayed silent. "Sometimes when someone's about to self-destruct, you just have to step aside," she continued, still recording. "Let me tell you, my dear husband, all your advice didn't mean much. I went above and beyond to get my work done on time and within budget, only to receive a few well-done girl comments. It wasn't until Grace pulled me aside that I learned what a woman really needs to succeed. Believe me, using lovemaking to climb the ladder works, and it's a lot easier and more enjoyable," she asserted. "So this happened before Sammer came into the picture?" Jack asked. "Oh, for a smart engineer, you can be pretty dense sometimes," she teased. "It was at a Christmas party a year after I joined Chromerica that I first gave in to Mark and never looked back." "Wait, you're also sleeping with the boss? Mark? Mark Harrison?" Jack exclaimed. "Yes, Jack. Mark, Sam, Ryan, anyone who can advance my career. Even now, if you think you've covered all bases, we let Mark know where we were going. He's rallying the rest of the team. They'll get a fabricated story about our absence. They'll have to move on without us. But I believe the extra effort we put in with their procurement managers will pay off." "Do I really want to hear this?" Jack thought. What the heck, why not?" "Extra effort?" Jack pressed. "You've always been proactive, Emma." "It was so effortless that I hesitate to even call it effort," she chuckled. "Reminds me of that old joke. The worst lovemaking I ever had was still pretty good," she said. "At the bidders conference, dealing with the men was smooth sailing, so we had to get a bit more creative with Brenda, the standout woman on the selection committee. It's funny that I can even seduce a woman, but I had to get old Sam to help out. And considering the assurances that we'll start collaborating after sealing the deal, Our selection committee seems flawless, she added. So why all this? If everything's going smoothly, why resort to such aggressive tactics? Jack asked. So, it was Sam's idea. He was insistent, and I told him to calm down. I promised I'd handle things with you and be back in time for the flight. But no, he had to assert his dominance. And now look where it's landed us. Me here with you instead of being the face of the winning team. Emma sighed. It's salvageable, but it'll definitely set me back. You don't come cheap, Jack retorted. Maybe not, Emma conceded, but I'll still rise. Well, you won't be soaring anytime soon, Jack shot back. He suddenly suspected Emma might have a transmitter. Mark, are you still on the line? I'm thinking of calling the authorities. There are multiple felonies here, not to mention fraud. This is a federal contract, right? Yes, the feds don't take kindly to what you're calling extra efforts. I'm sure you have top lawyers and all, but maybe there's another option, Mark hinted cryptically. Emma's phone rang, playing Hail to the Chief. Mark? She answered, putting it on speaker. Mark's voice filled the room. First off, I apologize. Sam made a serious mistake. I assure you the board will deal with it decisively. Thanks, Mark, Jack said, feeling a sense of relief. It's good to know you and the board take issues like assault and fraud seriously. Lawyers will get rich, but nobody wants to mess with the status quo. We can cover the fines. Sam and Ryan can do community service, but in the end, you'll be divorced and half as wealthy, Mark explained bluntly. Is there an alternative to this, Mark? Jack asked. Emma always said you were the smarter one. I'm starting to see why I brought Emma in. Yes, there is an alternative, Mark confirmed. Kramerica has effectively replaced you in Emma's affections, and when you confronted her, the response was shameless. Disgraceful, really. Jack nodded, understanding. Mark, he continued, instead of calling the cops, we might resolve this another way. I've just sent Emma a photo. Not personally, but through a technician. They assured me it disappears after you view it. Check it out. Maybe this will help settle things. Emma showed Jack the image. It displayed a large sum of money from the Bank of Grand Cayman. And when does this take effect? Jack asked. It's already active, Jack. You should have received an email with your account details. It's been a tough day. I understand if emotions are clouding your judgment. Emma is deceitful, no doubt, but at the bank, feelings don't matter. They just don't. Jack nodded, mimicking Mark's tone. Kramerica will handle your divorce costs. Reconciliation is off the table. It's clear Emma will get her share. Personal effects and pension. Jack thought it over. On one hand, he could take a moral stance, expose the whole mess, and let things fall where they may. On the other, he could walk away with a substantial payoff. Mark had given him 5 million reasons to consider the latter. Does Kramerica have medical staff, Mark? Jack asked. Oh, definitely, Jack. We have a few doctors available, Mark responded. Good, Jack said. Get a couple of them in a limo and send them over here for your team. So we're in agreement? Mark asked. About Emma, Jack confirmed. Exactly, Mark said. Anything else, Jack? Mark asked. Goodbye, Mark, Jack said, ending the call. Jack turned off the recording app on his phone and put it back in his pocket. I knew you'd see things our way, Emma said, attempting to smile charmingly despite her battered nose. Her eyes were darkened, blood crusted beneath her nostrils, and dried droplets hung from her chin. Jack found her pitiful appearance almost amusing and allowed himself a smirk. Emma misread his smile as agreement and leaned in for a kiss. Jack extended his hand to stop her, then pushed her back onto the sofa. Why would I ever want to kiss you, Emma? You're just not worth it. She looked up at him, hurt. Take what you want, but don't stick around tomorrow, Jack said, heading for the door. He paused next to Ryan. Still in pain, huh? Yeah, damn it. It's killing me, Ryan complained. Maybe this will help, Jack said, delivering a swift kick to Ryan's groin. Ryan doubled over, groaning in agony. Jack got into his car, unsure where to go. But food and shelter were top priorities. He grabbed a burger at a nearby cafe and checked into the Red Roof Inn just outside the city, near the highway. He fell asleep as soon as his head hit the pillow. Despite the lingering soreness from countless injuries, he dragged himself out of bed early the next morning. While brewing coffee in his motel room, Jack's phone chimed, signaling a new message. It was from that familiar number. He opened it immediately. Sorry about yesterday. Let's meet at the mall around noon. I'll be at the bar, the message read. He typed a quick reply and poured the lukewarm coffee into a paper cup. Yes, I'll be there, he thought, setting up his laptop to check his online banking. Back in college, long before he met Emma, Jack had a professor who recommended having at least one offshore account as a backup. Following the professor's advice, he opened an account in the Cayman Islands, naming it his Love You Foundation. Over the past decade, he'd contributed to it whenever he could, accumulating around $50,000 in savings. With recent developments, this account was about to receive a significant boost. Jack logged into each bank's secure website with practiced ease, transferring funds from Comerica's payment into his personal account. He left $100,000 in the original account. After showering and changing into clean clothes, he prepared to meet the mysterious sender. Arriving just after noon, Jack saw a well-groomed man around his age waving him over. Jack approached and said, "I believe you messaged me?" "Yes, I'm sorry about how things went down. It wasn't easy figuring out the right way to contact you," the stranger began. "Why don't you introduce yourself and explain your connection to Emma?" Jack interjected. "I was on her team. After 8 years in the Army, I left due to injuries. About 6 months ago, Comerica hired me, and I joined Sam's team 3 months back. I mentioned working with Emma to a friend, and when he asked for her full name, we found out we had a mutual acquaintance. He asked me to keep an eye on Emma as a favor. Initially, everything was fine, but about 2 months ago, Emma approached me. She's attractive and persuasive. When I asked about the ring, she just smiled and said, 'It's okay with you.' I made it clear I didn't agree, and things went cold. I started getting terrible assignments and grief from Sam. I reached out to our mutual friend again, and he suspected there was more to the story. He thought you should know. Sam even sent me a photo of them, trying to entice me with a reward if I joined their scheme. I don't approve of their tactics. I consider myself honest, so I quit yesterday and decided to reach out to you," he explained. "Our friend mentioned Jack Reed Lawson," Jack said. "If it weren't for Reed, I wouldn't be here," the stranger replied. "He helped me out when I was a rookie lieutenant. I owe him." "Same here," Jack agreed. "So what's your plan?" Mark laid it out pretty clearly. "I could involve the authorities, but with their legal team, it might end up being nothing. We reached a compromise. You might see it as a trade-off, and maybe you're right. But they took the one thing I can't replace. If I can't hold them accountable legally, I'll find another way to make them pay. It won't bring Emma back, but maybe I'll see she's less essential than I thought. I've got a trip planned. Please thank Reed for me. I won't be going back to work." "And you?" Jack asked. "Well, Reed always spoke highly of Baxter Inc. With you gone, they might need another engineer. They have a different approach there. You might prefer it. The work is challenging, but the perks aren't the same as Tony's team offered," he explained. Jack grinned. "I think I can live with that." The stranger stood and Jack followed suit. They exchanged a brief nod and parted ways without further discussion. On Monday, Jack was at the airport, checking in for his flight to Costa Rica. Tamarindo seemed like the perfect place to unwind. As he headed towards security, he noticed a mailbox. He pulled out an envelope addressed to the U.S. Department of Justice, Washington, D.C., and dropped it in. Inside was a flash drive with a recording. Maybe they'll find this interesting, he thought, considering that perhaps Mark's lawyers weren't as formidable as he believed. 9 months later, Jack sat at his usual spot in a cafe. Sophia, as charming as ever, brought him his beer. "Thanks," he said, lifting the bottle. His attention was caught by a piece of mail. The envelope had no return address. Jack wondered who might have found him. Although he hadn't gone to great lengths to hide, locating him in a small town on the Pacific coast of Costa Rica would require considerable effort. He left the envelope unopened for 2 days, cautious, but convinced it wasn't dangerous. He called out to Miguel, the cafe owner. "Do you have a knife?" "Sigh, Mr. Jack," Miguel replied. Jack handed him the envelope and stepped back. "You can never be too careful," he reminded himself as Miguel opened it. Miguel handed Jack the contents, which included a note that simply read, "Thought you might be interested," along with a phone number. Jack noted the number. Reed would have the means to locate me, he surmised. I can live with that. He flipped through the papers, finding a newspaper article with a photograph. The image showed Sam, Ryan, Emma, and Grace being escorted out of the Comerica building in handcuffs. The headline read, 4 accused of multi-million-dollar procurement fraud. Jack couldn't help but smile. Maybe Mark's legal team isn't as formidable as he thought, he mused, a habit he'd picked up due to his limited Spanish and a fondness for hearing English, even if it was just in his own thoughts. "Sophia, another beer, please," he requested, extending his empty bottle. "Sure thing, Mr. Jack," Sophia replied. "Thank you, Sophia," Jack said, taking a sip and gazing out at the deep blue Pacific Ocean.